A very good day. My name is Bart Vansevenant. I'm the Chief Product Officer for RightCrowd. Welcome to this short webinar introducing an award-winning new product called RightCrowd Access Analytics. So let's start with the reason why we developed this product. Organizations have invested a lot of money and energy implementing physical access control systems. But a universal problem that we see at each and every organization is insider threat. And that insider threat is directly linked to what we call the quality of the access control system's content. And by content, we mean the users and the access rights that were put into the physical access control system. 99% of all of the access control systems either have identities and data that should not be there, or the data is deficient. And that means they contain people that should no longer have access, or people with too much access. Let's illustrate this problem with a study from a large healthcare service provider in the United States. As you can see on this slide, this is a company with about 25,000 people, and you can see that in 1 year, there's quite a number of people either exiting the organization, being added to the organization, or going through changes in either their sort of job or role in the organization. As you can see, if you add it all up, almost 25% of all of the user records in their physical access control system has changed in just a single year. Now, given that 9 in 10 of all of the physical access control systems are implemented as an isolated system, that means that there's a heavy dependence on manual or semi-automated ways to keep those identities and access rights updated. In reality, we see that that is completely unsustainable, and it quickly leads to what we refer to as access chaos. And the net result of access chaos is insider threat risk. In this same example, imagine that just 2% of those changes were not applied or not applied correctly. That would mean that over 100 people would have improper access to this organization. Who's willing to accept that type of risk? The pandemic has significantly worsened this problem. We've all been working from home for almost 2 years, and then on top of that, we saw the Great Resignation. That resulted in thousands of suspended identities. So the situation today is fairly serious. Some organizations ignore this problem. Others know and acknowledge that their data is a mess, but they don't know where to start, let alone know the size of the problem. Fixing this access chaos is a huge task, but it happens at a time that everyone is trying to do more with less. So while companies realize that it's a hugely important job, the physical access control administrators simply don't have the time and resources to deal with it. RightCrowd Access Analytics is all about helping organizations fix that access chaos. The simple but crucial goal of this product is keeping the physical access control system or systems in sync with the business. And when we say in sync with the business, we mean on the one hand with people systems, thinking of an HR system or Active Directory, and on the other hand, keep them in sync with business systems that are relevant and important to make good access decisions. Great examples are a contractor management system for contractor access, and then learning management systems in which we keep track of who has gone through which certifications and trainings within the organization. Now, you may think, doesn't the physical access control system already do that? Like, don't we have connectors or sync products that integrate the physical access control system with other systems? Well, the reality is that most of those connectors or sync products don't work well at all. Organizations are trying to integrate systems that were never designed to work together in the first place. So how does RightCrowd Access Analytics solve this problem? What we're not doing is trying to replicate that. So Access Analytics is not another sort of effort at trying to create a connector or a sync product. What we are doing is something completely different. What we expect from each relevant system is a simple daily data dump. So no complex time-consuming integration, but simply a data dump from that system. It can be as simple as a dump in a CSV format. What the product is going to do then is pull all of that information into a graph database. That database links all of that contextual information around the identity. Let's have a quick look at the product itself. So what you're seeing here is the landing page of RightCrowd Access Analytics. And what we're going to do to illustrate the example is look for one specific record. We'll pull up the data of this person called Akeem. And what you can see here on the screen, you can see all of the relevant systems in which we have data about Akeem. If we now zoom in, we click on this, and what we're now opening is what we call an entity relationship diagram, in which we see all of the data that we keep in those different relevant systems linked to Akeem's identity. And we can zoom in, and we now see all of the data that we collected through those different systems that are sort of putting information into the product through those daily data dumps. So in the middle of this diagram, we have Akeem, and we can see, for example, here on the right, we see that Akeem also exists in the learning management system, and we can see a couple of the courses he has gone through. We also see that Akeem exists in the physical access control system, and we see that he has 2 access cards associated with that, a number of access levels. Now, on top of this foundation, now that we have all of that information pulled together, we can now run so-called policy checks against the data. The product comes with predefined policy checks based on best practices and on RightCrowd's 17 years of experience in this space. But of course, as a customer, you can also define as many additional policies as you want. The product will run these daily sort of checks against each time the latest data set that we receive from each of the systems feeding into it. So let's have an example. I'll open one of those dashboards here. And what we see in this dashboard is a number of base policy checks that any company should monitor for. We can compare user data from one or more physical access control systems to the data in the authoritative source, which in most cases is going to be the HR system, to identify potential data quality issues. We can check for users that have one or more records in a physical access control system. We can check for users that have more than one credential in a physical access control system. We can check for users that still have active access in the access control system, but are no longer an active employee, which is a clear example of an issue you want to address right away. As a customer, you can also define your own policy. We have an example here, a number of active card holders without an ISO 27001 training. So that's an example of a policy where you want to validate if, for example, people want access to the data center. We do require that they first went through this specific training. And so while the physical access control system has no direct connection whatsoever with that learning management system, this product, RightCrowd Access Analytics, pulls all of that data together and allows you to identify outliers being flagged. Now, let's talk about how organizations have tried to manage risk up until today. A lot of organizations have been using so-called user access reviews. As an example, you may want twice a year have the CIO or the managers of your IT organization review the list of people with data center access. And then you want them to explicitly either reapprove their access or tell them that the access is no longer required. Spreadsheets, which is what most organizations use today, are very hard to work with, especially as the organization starts to grow. Now, this product, RightCrowd Access Analytics, is taking access reviews to a whole next level. What we do with the product is we allow to still do those user access reviews. And I'm going to pull up an example of such an access review. Going to accept this review. And as you can see, you have a much nicer interface to do these types of user access reviews. But what is important is that we can add in these different columns here, where you're going to say whether the person still needs the access, yes or no. We can add as many contextual information data points as you want. As an example, you could add a column that says, when did the person last use this access? As that may be very relevant to either reapprove or not reapprove that access. Important to understand is that the product will not make changes to the underlying physical access control system. But what it can do is trigger an email, or it can create a service desk ticket to go and make that change. And the beauty of the product is that the next day, all of those checks will run again, and you'll be able to see whether or not those changes were made or not. So it's important to understand that this is not a one-time assessment tool. It's all about implementing a discipline, as we call it. You define policies and then you check whether or not they've been implemented correctly. And you do that every single day. So you make sure it becomes part of the DNA of the organization. So in summary, if this is a product that proactively hardens the company's security posture by mapping, measuring, and monitoring inappropriate access and identifying insider threat risks which may affect people and property. This product is all about getting the most out of an existing physical access control investment. It's a solution that brings together the data and information to make access control better and to make access decisions more accurate. We ensure that the so-called content of the physical access control system remains in sync with the business, and as a result of that, we make sure that everyone on site is right. So I would like to conclude with giving you two important reasons to reach out to us to discuss this product in more detail. First of all, as one of our early customers said, this is truly a game changer because it very effectively solves a large and urgent problem at the very heart of physical access control, like the access, who can and who cannot access the organization, a problem that only became bigger during the pandemic and then the following resignation round. Second reason, this is much more than just a tool. It's a product that is all about leveraging what you already have, the existing physical access control investments you made, to then implement a very efficient discipline that raises the maturity level of an organization's security practice. I would like to thank you for the time to listen to this webinar, and I hope to be in touch with you very soon.